in the mid to late 1970s, a federal grant was given to a project for East Los Angeles called Get Going. It was a social welfare program that may have been used by the Mexican Mafia as a front for dealing heroin and cocaine. The person at the center of this was a woman by the name of Ellen Delia, who was at one time a very important asset for the Mexican Mafia, as she was the one writing the proposals to get the federal funding. However, she was soon deemed a liability, and on February 17th, 1977, her body would be discovered outside the Sacramento airport. 4 members of the Mexican Mafia would go on trial for the murder, thanks to the grand jury testimony of a one-time Mexican Mafia member by the name of Eddie Gonzalez. Out of the 4 individuals who went on trial, the most famous was a man by the name of Alfie Sosa, who was accused with the help of Ellen's husband, Michael Delia, and others of her murder.
Members have kept their existence a secret, but police say they're very real and their lifeblood is murder and drugs. Tonight on his exclusive report, Joe Rico takes us inside the Mexican Mafia. Joe?
Well, Paul, they have 300 to 400 members in prison, and you double that on the outside. They have a long, violent, bloody history, and the fact that people are starting to turn up dead suddenly could serve as a wake-up call that the Mexican Mafia, or La M, is no myth, but instead a cold-blooded reality. Born in prison to survive, they thrive on the streets of L.A. to kill. Now we warn you, there are some graphic scenes you might find objectionable.
Everybody feared us. All the prison gangs, they control the inside, all the criminal activity. Anybody that shows weakness is executed without exception.
They are the gang of gangs. Vicious, calculating, fearless, deadly. And to leave, the blood could be yours. This is life in La M, or the Mexican Mafia. It began here at the Dual Vocational Institution in Northern California, about 70 miles east of San Francisco. Then it was a prison for some of the toughest and deadliest of young offenders in the state. 1957 it was. Luis Huero Flores, a gang member from Hawaiian Gardens, first introduced the idea of uniting all barrio gang members who were in prison. Their immediate plan: protection, intimidation, and control of other weaker inmates. One-time eMe hitman Ramon Mundo Mendoza was 21 years old when he joined the gang in prison. Years later, he defected and currently is in hiding.
The whole idea, the attraction to all the members that were inducted at that time were to simply improve their comfort zone while in prison. Clean sets of clothing, the best pair of shoes, what have you. Drugs, control of the drugs, control of the inmate prostitution.
As the eMe evolved and spread to other prisons, there arose other prison gangs to rival them. The Black Guerrilla Family, the Aryan Brotherhood, and eMe's bitter rival, the Nuestra Familia, another Latino gang rooted in Central and Northern California. Still outside of prison, La M was unknown, but anonymity soon ended with a chain of high-profile murders. 1976, this woman, Ellen Delia, threatened to disclose that La M had infiltrated a federally funded prison inmate program. In response, La M sends Alfie Sosa and this man, a former hitman, also in hiding, to greet her at Sacramento Airport. Did you have a surprise for her?
Right. What was that? Oh, we left out in the field.
And you guys killed her there?
Right.
Then there was the murders of 2 rival gang members in Bakersfield, the scandal over a Fresno judge allegedly in the pocket of La M. In Los Angeles, visitors from reputed Mexican Mafia godfather Joe Morgan. Morgan is convicted of murder and is serving a life sentence. Today, La M's influence is well-rooted in the streets of Los Angeles. There's the so-called no more drive-by edict. The Mexican Mafia orders the indiscriminate drive-bys to stop or else. Police gang experts say this edict is for real.
Most of the people would believe, well, gee, that's great. They don't want to. The Mexican Mafia is actually taking care of their people. They're making sure the drive-by doesn't happen. Not at all. Once they do this, they are getting a toehold in the communities, in the barrios. And once that happens, they're going to start pushing the Mexican Mafia criminal activity, which is extortion and drugs in the barrios. All the street violence and the drive-bys that they've put out their edict on to stop. I mean, that's something we couldn't do as law enforcement. But now they're able to do it, being locked up in prison.
Now investigators say at least 10 gang members have been murdered since that edict went out earlier this year. Now, tomorrow night, he was among the deadliest of eMe hitmen. Now, they want him dead. Using a hidden camera, Channel 4 News follows him as armed guards lead him to safety.
Every face that I saw to me was a potential hitman or hit person.
Again, that's tomorrow night at 5 o'clock on Dial eMe for Murder. Paul.
Joe Rico, thank you very much. We thank you for making us your choice for news at 5 o'clock on Channel 4. More fire coverage is coming ahead. The Channel 4 News at 6 will continue with our fire coverage in just a moment.
They are the gang of all gangs. They came together in prison. They came together to protect, intimidate, control, and kill. Cold-blooded executioners who become more powerful every day. Now, for the first time, hear from the most dangerous hitman of them all and go inside the Mexican Mafia. Today at 5, only on the Channel 4 News.
At an airport, a man risked death by coming back to testify.
The face that I saw to me was a potential hitman.
A Mexican Mafia hitman changes his allegiance. An exclusive interview at 5 tonight. And Princess Diana shuts up the critics.
Live in Southern California, this is Channel 4 News at 5:30.
The Mexican Mafia. From a prisoner to a gang hitman, a marked man tells all.
Recruited in 1971 at San Quentin. I was an aspiring Mexican Mafia member.
A Channel 4 News exclusive coming up.
Spread. Coming up inside California's most dangerous, most violent gang, you will see it all through the eyes of a gang hitman who kept a scrapbook of his hits. That's next.
Also at 6, we will show you the
Mexican Mafia, they are tough guys. They are bent on crime. Police say their lifeblood is murder and drugs. Tonight, we introduce you to a man who was one of the brothers. He was one of them. A hitman who murdered for the Mexican Mafia, but now he is testifying against them. Tonight, Joe Rico has this special report. Joe?
Well, Paul, for years, Ramon Mundo Mendoza was among the deadliest and loyal of Mexican Mafia soldiers. He was brilliant yet vicious, traits that got him on the inside. Then one day he had enough and became a born-again Christian and turned against La eMe. And very quickly, he went from #1 hitman to #1 on the eMe's hit list. Last week, he came out of hiding, a new life, a new look. He allowed Channel 4 News to follow him using a hidden camera as he traveled to San Francisco to testify once again against the Latino mob, who many believe were ready to kill him when he came to town.
I've got a guy in the car downstairs now. He's watching our car. How about the port security? Yeah.
Former Mexican Mafia hitman Ramon Mundo Mendoza was secretly rushed through San Francisco International Airport last week under heavy security, brought out of hiding to testify against his former brothers in La eMe. For years, they've tried to find and kill him. They've come close, twice. He prayed there wouldn't be a third.
Every face that I saw to me was a potential hitman or hit person, and I found myself scrutinizing everybody. Why don't you get the middle here? Oh. We're going to go downstairs. Why don't you just stay behind us? I'll kind of block it so they won't be able to see you. Okay.
Mendoza was a one-time member of La eMe's inner circle, a man the Mexican Mafia godfather once considered like a son. But Mendoza wanted out, and the only way out was death. He instead chose survival and ran and hid, and is now writing a book on the Mexican Mafia called From Altar Boy to Hitman.
I was recruited in 1971 at San Quentin. I was an aspiring Mexican Mafia member. I wanted to be part of their madness.
When he called it quits and defected, Mendoza had killed at least 20 people for La eMe. Some say a lot more, but it was all strictly business. He even kept a scrapbook. His last job as an MS soldier was in Signal Hill, November 1977. Helen Mrazek, a bail bondswoman who did business with the Mexican Mafia, wanted her husband, Robert, killed. She offered reputed Mexican Mafia godfather Joe Morgan $10,000 and a kilo of heroin as partial payment.
Joe contacted me and had me coordinate the execution and suggested that I use a game youngster.
That game youngster was 17-year-old gang member Artie Guzman from East Los Angeles. He was an up-and-comer who was eager to please La eMe.
He was also made a member of the Mexican Mafia when he went on to do his sentence in Folsom Prison.
Mendoza was also arrested, but having his fill with eMe, he turned and testified against Morgan. The godfather got a life sentence, Mendoza a new identity, and with the help of witness protection, he left California. Now, 13 years later, he was back in the spotlight. Government attorneys knew bringing him back was a deadly risk.
There's always a danger that information will get out accidentally, and we would be concerned about people learning of his whereabouts and coming to try to find him.
If we don't run into an adversary or into a bullet, that doesn't mean they didn't have somebody waiting somewhere. It's just that they don't know which way we're coming from.
His testimony went without a hitch, though it is believed eMe had spotters in court. But Mendoza says it doesn't matter anymore. He's through with any involvement with his past. This was his last call.
You disappear again.
Yeah, I go back home, and I just resume my life anonymously. It's been 22 years since I joined the Mexican Mafia in San Quentin, and it seems like an eternity. I'm happy where I'm at, and I don't want to ever again return to my previous lifestyle.
And if you're heading southbound on Highway 880, the Nimitz Freeway through Alton.
Now the double life has been difficult. No family ties, having to make up stories about the past, can't even take off his shirt without revealing tattoos, then having to explain. He has a 9-to-5 job, and he says he misses his Los Angeles Dodgers, and yes, he says he has tremendous remorse for what he has done. Tomorrow night we conclude with the man who calls the shots, the Mexican Mafia godfather, Joe Morgan. His deadly likeness is portrayed in the controversial movie American Me. People died behind the making of that film, and many say the real godfather called the fatal shots. That's tomorrow night right here on Channel 4 at 5 o'clock. Back to you.
All right, Joe, very interesting story. Coming up next here are the troubled times for superstar Michael Jackson, his latest family tragedy.
Coming next with a weekend AccuWeather forecast.
And when our news continues here at 5:30, dangerous stunts on movie sets. We'll show you how Hollywood is cleaning up its act after yet another accident.
And a former hitman for the Mexican Mafia talks about the violence surrounding a hit movie.
Maybe too much.
Our special report, Inside the Mexican Mafia.
And the Mexican Mafia, the gang at the top. Members of other LA gangs dream about being members someday. Their lifeblood is murder and drugs. Tonight in his special report, Joe Rico takes us inside. We'll look at the man at the top, the Godfather. Joe?
Well, Colleen, since it was formed behind California prison walls in the late 1950s, the Mexican Mafia, or La eMe, has about 800 members and associates today, both in and out of prison. It has been a violent, bloody history, and tonight we take a look at the man they call the Godfather, the man calling the shots, 63-year-old Joe Morgan, currently serving a life sentence for murder.
Joe Morgan is an enigma. Half of him is one of the cruelest, coldest son of a bitches you'll ever know. The other half of him is one of the funniest, compassionate, well-liked people.
Joe Morgan is the most influential member of the Mexican Mafia today, the Godfather. Yet the man whom authorities believe has been involved in more than 100 murders is not Mexican. He's white, a Slavic who grew up in San Pedro and East LA and absorbed the culture, the language, and the violent underbelly of their mean streets, the gangs.
As far as Mexican Mafia members are concerned, Joe's Mexican because his heart isn't Mexican. So we don't look at him by the color of his skin. Well, he was born and raised in the barrios, in the neighborhoods. So by hanging around with the guys from the neighborhood, he thought like them, he spoke like them, he speaks extremely fluent Spanish. And as far as he's concerned, he's Chicano. And if you told him otherwise to his face, especially if you told it to him in a negative way, he'd kill you.
Morgan did killed early in life. 1946, as a 16-year-old, he bludgeoned the husband of his 32-year-old lover, Elvira Duran Rojo, and dumped the body in a rural canyon. It was a sensational case that gave the local press its fill of tabloid headlines. It also introduced Joe Morgan to a place he'd call home for most of his adult life, state prison, where he was sent at the age of 16. And it was here that Morgan helped mold a newer, deadlier wave of Mexican Mafia soldier, a group now requiring the death oath and a pledge of silence. In little time, La eMe had become the most feared of all prison gangs. It was an army that pushed its members to be the worst that they could be. But Morgan was also shrewd and had big plans. Drugs. He had access to the largest heroin and cocaine supplier in Mexico. He also had ties with the Cosa Nostra. But in the 1970s, he out-finessed the Italian mob and gained control of the LA heroin market. Former eMe member Ramon Mundo Mendoza was Morgan's right-hand man who helped engineer the Mexican Mafia's rise beyond the prison walls, a plan that was chronicled in the 1992 film American Me, starring Edward James Olmos.
The choices we made to survive got Mundo, JD, and me 10 to 25.
I was played by the role of Pepe Serna. I was the character was Mundo, which was my nickname when I was a Mexican Mafia member. Okay. William Forsythe played the role of Joe Morgan, who in the movie was JD. And Cheyenne Cadena was played by Edward James Olmos, which in the movie was a character called Santana.
But sources say the film offended many members of the Mexican Mafia, especially Joe Morgan. It was believed that even behind the maximum security walls of Pelican Bay Prison near the Oregon border, Morgan gave the go-ahead to have 3 technical advisors to the film killed. Whatever plans the Mexican Mafia has for the future, it will be without the Godfather. Channel 4 News has learned that Joe Morgan is terminally ill. He is currently here at Corcoran Prison, south of Fresno, undergoing tests for a growth in his liver. Doctors give him 12 weeks to live. Ever since he began serving his life sentence for murder, Joe Morgan has maintained his silence, even refusing to acknowledge whether or not the Mexican Mafia even exists. Said one former member of the Mexican Mafia inner circle, Joe Morgan isn't the type for dramatic deathbed confessions or conversions. In his own warped sense of value, he's been a good soldier till the end.
He's a hope-to-die soldier, and he chose to continue that road, and it looks like he's taken it to his grave.
Morgan is now seeking mercy, asking for a compassionate release to be with his family. Prison officials say, considering his clout, even in ill health, that release appears very unlikely. Paul, Colleen.
All right, Joe Rico, thank you very much.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of Greenlit Gang TV. Hope you're all having a blessed day. Hope you had a good weekend so far. I've been at work all day long. We're getting ready to get out of here. I got to go to a Christmas party with my girl, but doesn't mean I don't have time to get a video up. Really quick, though, before we jump into the video, if you would, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. It goes a long way for the growth of this channel. And as I've stated before in the past couple weeks, the new goal, 30,000 subscribers. Hopefully we get there sooner rather than later. But regardless, I'm excited to bring this video to you guys today. We're going to be talking about an individual who some would say has the most bodies in the history of the Mexican Mafia. And that's Alfred Alfie Sosa from Los Angeles, California. And like we're going to be doing, or like we've done with our other Mexican Mafia videos, I want to start off with reading a post by my favorite social media page and one of my favorite YouTube channels by the name of Prison Chronicles. Go read their pages, go watch their videos. They do awesome, awesome work. Let's jump right into it here, though. Alfred Alfie Sosa from Los Angeles, California was linked to over 50 murders committed between 1975 and 1977. Notable victims included Gilbert Roybal, an eMe member who was killed in 1977 for planning to leave the gang. Yep, that'll get you killed. Bruno Chavez, an eMe associate, murdered by Sosa and another member. And also in 1977, Ellen Delia. We're going to be talking about that one a lot more. Very, very famous Mexican Mafia-related murder. The former executive secretary of a state-funded program called Project Get Going. That's what we were talking about in the intro, which the eMe had infiltrated. Remember, like we talked about, it was a front. Basically, they were dealing dope out of their coke and heroin. Excuse me. Sosa ordered her murder because the gang believed she was going to inform authorities about the misuse of its federal funds. His illegal arrest, and okay, follow me here. Sosa's illegal arrest and subsequent police misconduct in the investigation of Ellen Delia's murder led to a significant legal case, People versus Superior Court, and it was named after Sosa. 1982, which resulted in the suppression of evidence and affirmed the importance of constitutional rights even for criminal suspects. He and an associate, Armando Varela, were illegally detained and arrested outside Michael Delia's residence, Ellen's husband, and also an eMe member. First Mexican Mafia member who was also Italian, okay? Said he had ties to the East Coast mob, but he was also part Hispanic. Police used this illegal detention as a subterfuge to question anyone visiting the house. Varela was interrogated illegally for 5 days without an attorney present. 5 days, man, that's crazy. Before he finally implicated Alfie Sosa and others. He ultimately disappeared to Mexico to avoid prosecution. However, he was caught and arrested. The Mexican police had Alfie sign a confession letter with a list of victims. However, before signing, Alfie told them they had missed one person and wrote in, quote, Mickey Rooney. This was his way to prove he was coerced into signing this confession, as Mickey Rooney was an actor who was alive and well. It's actually kind of funny. He had signed his confession to avoid being tortured. You can picture Alfie Sosa in a Mexican prison or Mexican jail being told to write a list of everybody you killed, and then they get to the end and he writes Mickey Rooney. The ruse worked and the confession was thrown out in court. The California Supreme Court ultimately affirmed the trial court's decision to suppress the evidence obtained through these unconstitutional means, highlighting the importance of constitutional rights and deterring such police tactics. Alfie, however, ultimately was convicted and sentenced to life in California State Prison, where he spent the rest of his life before passing away only a few years ago, 2021, at the age of 78. And this is important. Still considered a member in good standing. I would compare him to like a Champ Reynoso, even though Champ died in the feds well into his 70s, was considered at the time of his death the highest ranking federal individual of the Mexican Mafia. I think Wedo Shai took his position as of like today, December 6, 2025. I believe the highest individual in the feds is Raymond Wedo Shai Shryock. But again, you see a guy like Champ Reynoso, you see an individual like Alfie Sosa. These guys are in their 70s, man. Still walking the line, still walking main line, still, they're going out on their shield. They're going out how they began. And there is a certain amount of respect you have to give to that, at least for me. Whether you agree with what they did or didn't do and all the evil acts they committed, it doesn't really matter. At some point, to put in 30, 40, 50 years within an organization and to not get killed, to not end up on a hit list, and to die in good standing, that's important. That's absolutely important. He was born on June 23rd, 1943, grew up in the Lincoln Heights area of LA, and only stood about 5'4" tall. Definitely had that little man syndrome by every account that I watched, read, and listened to. He had that want to show that he was worth it. Might not be very tall, might not be very big, but he packed a punch. Joined the Happy Valley Street Gang, or basically East Side Happy Valley 13. His gang handle originally was Happy, from Vadio Happy 13. The East Side Happy Valley 13 is recognized street gang originating from the historic Happy Valley neighborhood in the east side of LA. Happy Valley is a small residential neighborhood in northeast Los Angeles, located south of Pasadena and west of El Sereno. The gang is generally associated with the territory in and around this specific community. And if anybody goes in the comments, man, why are you showing us old clips? Well, that's why, because our guy that we're talking about, Alfie Sosa, grew up around the time that 60 Minutes interview was going on. That's the age and the times in which he came up, and that's about the East LA gangs. It was said that Alfie Sosa, this guy goes way back, kind of you would call him like an OG, one of the original members, known for starting the street tax, the infamous Mexican Mafia street tax, with the likes of Joe Morgan, Mundo Mendoza, and a couple others. Also, big piece of Mexican Mafia history. Participated in the first Mexican Mafia internal hit in 1971, murdered a guy by the name of Alfonso Alvarez inside Monterey Park, shot him to death along with another MA member by the name of Ernest Roybal. Known as a very charismatic person, well-liked, and someone who could get you on his side, all right? And another good channel to watch is Police and Fire Publishing. Mundo Mendoza does a lot of the coverage on it. I watched his video on it, and he has a really interesting story about how him and another guy were kind of the hitters, right? There was this big kind of prison gate flooding that they opened up in the 70s. Some laws got passed, some bills got passed, and a lot of made members hit the streets, including Mundo, including Alfie, including others. And Mundo and I forget the name of his partner. Go watch his channel, Police Fire Publishing. Go watch his videos. Does a great job. But they were basically, literally, their jobs were going around doing these hits, doing these killings. And Alfie was the getaway driver. And he talks about how in one of them, though, they kill the guy's bodyguards. All right? Well, the guy gets away. Okay? And they jump in the car. They're like, Alfie, go, go, go. And Alfie sits there with his arms folded. And Mundo makes a comment that basically he was pouting. And they had to promise Alfie, this is just, it's just like crazy. They had to promise Alfie that, okay, next time we go do this, you can be the shooter. I think he says pistolero. You can be the shooter. And so then he drove from there. But it is important to say that Alfie Sosa was a full-blown killer. Killed men and women. And if anyone ripped the Mexican Mafia off, Alfie was there to take care of it. Okay, now we're going to be talking about Michael and Ellen D'Elia and the murder of Ellen D'Elia. I would say Ellen D'Elia, there were other very important murders that Alfie Sosa committed, but I would say the murder of Ellen D'Elia and then the fallout of her murder, and obviously that huge court case about the suppression of evidence and just the police misconduct, the prosecution, just the mess that it all made, the headlines that it made, the sensationalism of it, the fact that it was the wife of a Mexican mafia member, the fact that it was about basically a government-funded program that the Mexican mafia used and abused to traffic drugs, steal money, and Alfie Sosa was at the center of this. We're going to read from this article, and basically the title of it is Inside the Mexican Mafia by John Hammerly, and this is the quote on the top of it. For the first time, a shooter-turned-informant is revealing the inner workings of the Mexican mafia outside a grand jury chamber. There are people that had told, but this person, Eddie Gonzalez, really talked. On January 2nd, 1978, a man named Eddie Gonzalez will be escorted into a heavily guarded Sacramento courtroom by bodyguards from the U.S. Marshals Protective Custody Program as his former colleagues watch from the defense table. Eddie, a quote shooter who traded testimony for immunity and a new identity, will take the stand in the first major trial involving the so-called Mexican Mafia, a prison-spawned gang that turned from street fighting to heroin running and contract murder. Eddie will be a key witness in the trial of 4 Mexican Mafia soldiers who are accused of the much-publicized murder of Ellen D'Elia, a woman whose talent for writing proposals for federal grants won funding for the Get Going project of East LA, a social welfare program that may have been used by the Mexican Mafia as a front for dealing in heroin and cocaine. D'Elia's body was found outside the Sacramento airport on February 17, 1977. And it was Eddie Gonzalez's grand jury testimony that helped indict 4 members of the Mexican Mafia for the murder. Only the secret grand jury testimony of Eddie Gonzalez enabled law enforcement authorities to penetrate the veil of mystery that surrounds the notorious Mexican Mafia. And thanks to Eddie Gonzalez, we can tell the inside story of the Mexican Mafia for the first time. What the jury is likely to hear, according to Eddie's version of the story, is a scenario of betrayal and brutality leading to the execution of Ellen D'Elia by her lover, none other than Alfredo Alfie Sosa, with the help of her estranged husband, Michael D'Elia. So yeah, we're reading that right. Michael D'Elia, half Italian, half Hispanic, into the Mexican Mafia, was basically this estranged husband. Well, Alfie slid in there, was her lover. Don't know if they were lovers, while those two were still married, while Michael and Ellen were still married. But regardless, he's sleeping with her. They're doing this grant program. They're receiving money, but they're also basically running drugs and using this give back to the community as a front. The Mexican Mafia believed that Ellen, who served as executive secretary of Get Going, was ready to inform authorities about the misuse of the project's federal funds. Alfie Sosa told Eddie Gonzalez, the star informant, that Ellen must be murdered. Eddie, this is crazy, checked with Michael, that's her estranged husband, to confirm that the proposed hit was, quote, strictly business, not a personal grudge by Alfie against his girlfriend. And then the hit was on. Alfie lured Ellen to Sacramento with the promise that they would patch up their troubled love affair and at the same time share some good cocaine. Ellen was driven to the Los Angeles airport by none other than Michael D'Elia. She was met at the Sacramento airport by Eddie Gonzalez and Alfie Sosa, who had enlisted the services of 2 other defendants, Abraham and Juan Hernandez, in spotting a deserted site near the airport where Ellen could be killed and dumped. Eddie and Alfie developed an elaborate ruse to avoid arousing Ellen's suspicion. As soon as they picked her up at the airport, Alfie began to cough intermittently, a common habit among veteran cocaine users. The cough grew worse as they left the airport and drove along the empty road. When they reached the murder site, the hacking and coughing was unbearable. Alfie signaled Eddie to pull over to the side of the road, where he left the car and bent over a roadside ditch as if he were vomiting. Quote, you'd better help your boyfriend, Eddie suggested to Ellen, quote, before the cops spot us and start hassling us. Ellen slipped out of the rental car and joined her boyfriend at the side of the road. When she leaned over his shoulder to help him, Alfie grabbed Ellen and jammed the barrel of her gun under her right ear near the back of her skull, and then he pulled the trigger. Alfie returned to the car and Eddie pulled away. That is brutal and that is violent. Wow. Ellen D'Elia's body was found later that night by a farmer. She had been silenced. That's crazy. The reporter goes on to talk about a number of newspaper stories about the escapades of the Mexican Mafia. Said he got a telephone call from Eddie Gonzalez. For the past dozen years, he told me he had been among a select group of, quote, shooters who ran the gang's murder and drug operations after being arrested on a firearms charge. Eddie agreed to turn state's evidence in exchange for a new life for himself and his family. And now he wanted to tell his story. That's insane. So basically, Alfie, Sosa, Mundo Mendoza, Eddie, these guys they get out in the 70s, prison, laws passed, they get out, and they are just full-on active in the streets, and committing murders at will. Like me and you go to work to clock in, these guys are committing murders. And then obviously Alfie would go on to commit many, many more. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. And one other thing, if you guys want to check it out, is the fallout, though, from those arrests, like we talked about. All the dirty tactics used by the police. You got to imagine if you're the police, knowing what you know about these guys, knowing that the violence that they incur, the murders they commit, and not being able to prove it. I fully believe that there's murders. Alfie Sosa, they're putting 50 bodies on him. I mean, that is a very high number. But I think there's a lot of members who have lower numbers that have committed 3-4 times that, right? Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Until next time, much love. Peace.